Well, Android settings all complete. Welcome everybody to Exegetical Readings with Dave in the morning. Today we're doing one of the essential texts or excerpts for the PMC course, the PMC Consciousness and Ideology course that has been ongoing here for the last couple of months. It's the only course on the channel that has all been made public. And the course has gone through Thomas Frank, Barbara Ehrenreich, James Burnham, and then more Barbara and John Ehrenreich, as well as some W.E.B. Du Bois and Dr. Adolf Reed Jr. But this is the week. This is the week where we get into contemporary contributions to the discourse, because the point of this course is to give you a basic footing in the literature. And by having a basic footing in the literature, where you haven't even read the entirety of the books just listed, you've just read excerpts, you will nonetheless be decades ahead of everyone else who keeps running their mouths saying that this is not an important concept, that this is not an important contribution to class theory, that this is a category that doesn't need to be taken seriously, because they haven't done the readings, right? And the ironic part is that they're usually professors, they have academic training, they're supposed to know better, meaning that you don't just talk about something without having done a survey of the literature, but nonetheless they have been doing that. And so my goal in this course has not been to make you a Burnhamite or an Aaron Reichenite or a Thomas Frank fan or any of these things, but to instead show you that there are a variety of perspectives from left to right, from economic liberal to illiberal, from communist revolutionary to enlightened centrist. There's all kinds of perspectives and approaches and ideological commitments that all these different authors come from or have to offer as their contribution to thinking through what is this changing class composition, what is its role in the reproduction of class society, what does this do in terms of creating a problem for what calls itself the left today? How does this pose a challenge to traditional theories of class or social change? All of these questions are more important than any one takeaway. Okay? I just really want to advocate for the questions, because I don't think genuine change comes from people who haven't spent serious time contemplating the real questions. What's the point of who would you really want to follow somebody or take ideas from somebody who hasn't spent any serious time trying to understand something by working through a variety of standpoints? I wouldn't. I'm not interested in that. And that's why when people are like, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so, all these other people who have opinions about how this theory doesn't hold water, I'm like, okay, yeah, how about you go tell them they need to talk to me? How about you go tell them they need to work through this playlist? or actually take the course, because from what I can tell, they haven't done the work. And I'm personally only interested in having conversations with people who have a basis in the texts, because as a working class plebe who spent the last decade trying to figure out a lot of things, I can see that a lot of my time was wasted listening to people who are strongly opinionated, who didn't have a basis in the literature. So with all of that said, I nonetheless want to make this as accessible to people as possible, because a working class person, you're in the Amazon warehouse like I was last year, and as I probably will be again later this year, or you're doing something else, and you just don't have the time to sit down and do these readings for yourself. This playlist that's on the screen right here has everything in the course. It's all available. It has lectures. It has, see right here, first lectures right there, second lectures right there, and third lectures down here at the bottom. And in between those are all the exegetical readings. So this week, the contemporary contributions are from two women. Dr. Catherine Liu, who I have spoken to on this channel when it was Theory Plebe in the past, and who will be re-released over time back onto this channel. It was a really fantastic conversation, and that'll probably be re-released here in the next month and a half. But also, Catherine Liu, as a friend of the channel, who will be back in the very near future. People who are a part of this course are going to have access to a special conversation with Catherine Liu that nobody else in the world will have access to. And so I'm really, really excited to introduce her to you all. And so I'll be reading from her conclusion of the popular polemical text, or polemical text. I got corrected on that by Swole in the chat a little while ago. He was like, polemical? Yeah, it's polemical. Sorry. Anyway, I'll be reading from the conclusion of her polemical text, Virtue Hoarders, and then I'll probably post it tomorrow, will be a more post-left perspective. All right, I don't know that she would actually appreciate that term, but that's what she gets associated with, and therefore it's the way we'll kind of refer to the position, and that is Angela Nagel. And so right here is the syllabus for this course. At the very bottom are the essays and excerpts. You can see Catherine Liu's Virtue Hoarders conclusion. The link to it is right here. And then Angela Nagel's Anti-Clerical Manifesto, which is right here. It says, did populism start a 21st century anti-clerical revolution? And what you get here is her argument against thinking of it as the PMC and for thinking of it as a secular clerisy. There's all kinds of interesting problems that this creates, and that's kind of the goal, is to quilt the entire class that we've been doing, where we're advocating for the concept or category of the PMC, and calling it all into question from a sort of post-left perspective. Of course, I don't know if she'd call herself that. I think she'd call herself a socially conservative soc dem, which is her own self-deprecating identification. And when I say self-deprecating, I just mean that Angela Nagel has been called these things as a sort of slur, and I think she's kind of taken it on as like a sure, why not kind of position, which I'm sympathetic to, seeing all that she's been through in the last decade. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, stick around for the exegetical reading from her, and I'll talk about it then. But for now, it's the time to read from the conclusion of Virtue Hoarders. Dr. Catherine Liu teaches a course on the PMC at a university in the UC university system. I believe that's the case. I'm not sure which university off the top of my head, but this book is the one that people tend to think of when they think of the term PMC, because she has popularized it more than anyone else in the last 5 years. She goes on Jacobin to have conversations with a couple of the hosts over there who really love her and love to bring her back on. In the last week, I think she was on the Majority Report talking to one of the people over there. And so, yeah, we love Catherine Liu. We think that her popularizing this stuff is very important. And so that's enough of an introduction to it. Let's get to it. Conclusion. Marx's capital was a world teeming with raw materials and active agents fighting and working with each other, engaged in the processes of production to wrest wealth from the raw materials like gold, iron, wool, and cotton. For Marx, these workers would make history when they revolted against capitalism. PMC elite workers also see themselves as the makers of history. They labor in a world of floating signifiers, statistics, analytics, projections, predictions, and identity, performativity, virtue signaling, and affectual production. Their loves and lives are both virtual and disembodied. Their work continues unabated despite the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic. People trained in this regime of symbolic manipulation love to weaponize outrage to fuel moral panics. But they are unable and unwilling to face their identity as a class. In the liberal professions, they police each other to enforce the sort of social and intellectual conformity required by their class, one that is fundamentally fragmented by competition and individualism. All PMC approved policies about inequality, racism, and bias circle back to strengthening their sense of political agency and cultural and moral superiority. In a viciously competitive market environment, they have abandoned once cherished professional standards of research while fetishizing transgression, or better yet, the performance of transgression. Really good point there. Despite its veneer of detached sophistication, the PMC embraces melodrama and sentimentality when dealing with inequality, imagining powerless people as innocent victims who it alone is uniquely able to help. Right, so the PMC she makes this point actually in the introduction to this text when she says that saying that a certain marginalized or victimized group needs empowerment as a PMC person has this sort of connotation or subtext that they need us to give them empowerment. Or even if we're talking about a representative of that group who wants to make themselves the spokesperson of that group, oh, well, they need me to be their Moses, to be their thought leader, to be their advocate. And obviously Catherine Liu's point is, no, they fucking don't. No, marginalized and victimized people do not need the PMC to go through these ritual performances on their behalf. It's actually infantilizing. The PMC desperately wants to be a gender-neutral Atticus Finch. For Marx, the unique industrial processes of labor formed the vanguard class of industrial capitalism. Managers and professionals were unfortunately never part of that class, but their complicity with capital is something they want to disguise as resilience and flexibility, qualities that working class losers do not possess in the PMC worldview. Workers remade the industrial world, but today's PMC elites resent the revolutionary power of the leftism of the past. They want to manage social change and a possible revolution even as their own functions are constrained by the ideological demands of the ruling class. Even though they understand the futility of their own work, they do not believe in the systemic changes necessary to remake economic systems that would allow the many to find rewarding work and lead meaningful lives of dignity and economic security. Right? And of course, in my own lecture, I'll have my own kind of spin-off of everything. I think that this is the focus here is kind of just from there are basic material deliverables that are not that the existing PMC is never going to try to deliver on, right? My contribution of sorts, it would be that they take time energy for granted. It's the one thing that that their privilege concerning leisure time, or at least being able to choose how to orchestrate their week, makes them ignorant of concerning the rest of the working class. The broader working class does not have the time and energy to go through the literature to actually develop an understanding of these things, and therefore either have to take everything from on faith from the PMC or are considered bad ones for being skeptical, for not trusting and obeying and following the leader. In historicizing the PMC's ideological investments, I am not simply trying to understand its identity to add to a precious repository of scholastic knowledge. I am interested in criticizing its values in order to abandon its politics. To build a socialist future, we have to engage in a constant struggle to overcome the political paralysis to which both centrism and pseudo-radicalism lead. Across the world, ordinary people without college degrees have rejected PMC technocracy in favor of populist authoritarianism because they no longer believe in the dominant neoliberal narrative about austerity and competition. To the majority of non-college educated people, the PMC increasingly appear as pedantic, hypocritical, and punishing. In authoritarian, science-denying conservative leaders, they recognize their own helpless rage and ignorance. In angry demagogues, they find the embodiment of a sovereignty they have been denied. Of course, their support for billionaire populists and their minions is entirely reactionary, but the political answer to populism is not liberal reformism or moderate centrism. It is committed socialism. If the PMC still insists that a little bit of economic redistribution should be managed carefully by corporate-friendly experts, in quotes, socialists have to demand a different order of politics and a different calculation of political engagement, one which aims at building solidarity in the shadow of a distant revolutionary horizon. Dear reader, you are probably like me, a member of the PMC, or at least you have been educated in its institutions. I hope that this short introduction to the false consciousness of a class that still wants to believe itself a heroic and virtuous political actor will strengthen the reader's resolve to reject PMC politics while building on this critique of its reactionary class positions. Having been imbued with its ethos and its ideology, we all have to work to undo the effects of PMC propaganda to join the class war from below. This brief introduction serves as a guide to identifying PMC values in ourselves, the better to liquidate them. Because of the ideological distortions of leftist politics by PMC values, self-criticism must be the beginning of all political engagement. We have to abandon the way the PMC wants us to think about success, intelligence, racism, violence, children, reading, healthcare, well-being, pleasure, and sex. And I would just add, as a sort of advertisement, to read her entire book, Virtue Hoarders, for yourself, as you should. Not that you have to do it anytime soon, but you should. This should be on your bucket list for sure. She goes through all of these things, right? Child rearing, reading books that conscious raise, and all of these other things have been turned into, they've been commodified as sign value for the accumulation of social and cultural capital in the PMC. Okay, I'm using a bunch of Bourdieuian and Baudrillardian jargon there, with the promise of unpacking that in future lectures that I hope to do in future classes, where the recommended readings of this course that include Bourdieu's Forms of Capital, as well as a bunch of other very important texts that do have a lot to add to this, will be unpacked and tied into the rest of the course. But for now, I just use the jargon, but let me just say it in plain speak. Most people don't have the time and energy to do these kinds of readings, to raise children in the kind of ways that the PMC advocates for or moralizes about, etc. And the PMC thinks that it's resisting all forms of oppression by putting a ton of money and time and energy into these individualistic and career advancing, distinguishing ways of doing things. And that's what she's talking about when she says virtue hoarding. Okay? And this is basically like, oh, well, those poor people don't get nice things because they're racist. They don't get nice things because they're stupid. They're not successful because they're blah, 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 blah. And so this is all a part of the privatization of everything down to the individual, right? And so even though on the left PMC, you'll have this rhetoric of, oh, we're against meritocracy, almost every solution itself reifies that meritocracy and individualizes, privatizes, etc., through forms of discursive Taylorism. Okay? We have to reject making a virtue out of taste and consumption habits. We have to understand ourselves as the universal subject of a history dominated by capitalism's dynamic, exploitative, and punishing powers. I think the fact that she keeps saying punishing instead of punitive speaks to the fact that she is trying to just put it in the most straightforward language possible so that people don't have to turn to a dictionary over and over and over again, right? Because in academic keys, people would always put punitive right here, but she keeps saying punishing powers, right? And that's what it means. That's what punitive means anyway. It will not be easy because PMC elites control so much of our lives and quietly threaten us with exclusion if we do not follow their sanctioned lines of milquetoast politics. The PMC would have us forget that as a class, it has served capitalism and the profit motive very well. Tragically, it has also been hugely successful at monopolizing the language of progressive and enlightened politics, even as it has abandoned the best aspects of liberal professionalism and the democratic culture in which such ideas of intellectual autonomy can thrive. The values of professionalism, with its disinterested call for accountability and respect of truths, arrived at by a community of researchers, are critical to building socialism. Professionalism is not the enemy of solidarity. Professionalism and its disciplinary limits are necessary for nurturing socialist specialists who will be needed to oversee massive economic redistribution and the strengthening of public infrastructure and public goods that will be necessary for the environmental survival of the planet and the political survival of a democracy. I am finishing this manuscript in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic lockdown. The economic and public health disaster that we are experiencing in the United States is directly linked to the power of for-profit healthcare interests and corporations in hollowing out public services and public health. The fact that the Biden-Harris administration is opposed to national health care, or Medicare for all, is very revealing. Rather than promoting national health care, the phalanx of centrist experts will promote individual actions, such as mask wearing, as the new virtues, right? And this is obviously the way that wearing a mask became more about sign value than it did about the purported medical benefits, right? And when I say sign value, it's it adds some value to your identity, saying this says something special about me, right? And in a way that's supposed to help you navigate the networks of social capital accumulation, right? So from the right side of things, it appeared to be nothing more than a Biden hat that you're wearing, right? It just looked like a Biden bumper sticker over your mouth. From the left, it was, no, I care about people. Me wearing this says that I care about people, which also on the sly says if you're not wearing one and you're not in this group, well, then you clearly don't care about people. You're a murderer. I mean, even 3 months ago, Anne? Was it 5 months ago? I don't know. We just saw someone, 2022, 2 years after the height of COVID, and someone in Portland was posting that not wearing a mask is,
Yeah, not wearing a mask is white supremacist and anti-black.
yeah, you know. The sad thing about living in Portland is that even if you do leave your progressive left bubble on the internet, you're still in the bubble. So I can hardly hold it against such a person, but the absurdity as people who've been traveling all over the world and going to states all over the place, it's just like you couldn't be more out of touch. And being out of touch when you have a progressive left position that advocates for good things for everybody against the right is reactionary, right? Willful ignorance and staying in your bubble is reactionary when you're making a bad name for everything good. That's why I have this term that I keep using, radical responsibility. It's the responsibility incumbent on a radical to not be willfully ignorant. You have a special kind of responsibility because you're trying to advocate for things. The regular working class person who's just trying to get by does not have the same kind of responsibility. Yes, we should wear masks, but we should demand free COVID-19 testing and contact tracing, free vaccines along with the rebuilding of public health institutions to serve public health and not the profit motive. If times go back to normal and your boss or health insurer tries to sell you on the commodification of your health as a wellness protocol, remember that healthcare is part of public infrastructure, not a commodity. Just as provision for quality childcare for every family should be part of public infrastructure, so should the care of the elderly and the sick be priority areas of public investment. My goal is simple: help normalize socialist economics and politics in the face of the concerted demonization of its vision of what is collectively possible. Socialism itself is neither glamorous nor innovative. It does not sprinkle its agendas with new pronouns or fancy neologisms. Its signifiers do not float on air or ether. Its policies should be tethered to good statistics, objective reality, and the power and uncertainty of scientific method and reason. The power and uncertainty of scientific method and reason is the exact opposite of what we saw. In fact, I don't think she really goes into it here, so I will just say that reading up on the PMC in 2020, while I saw what was the beginnings of a working class movement get liquidized into BLM, identitarian, particularist politics, and wear a mask, trust the science, was very revealing, because the whole point is the PMC says trust us or you're a bad one. Stop trying to understand things for yourself. We don't have to reason with you or you're a reactionary. Oh, all of that other stuff, that's just conspiracy theories, right? And of course, when you're being gaslit, epistemologically gaslit by the PMC, conspiracy theories are going to seem very attractive, aren't they? Of course, the PMC has also found it advantageous to call anything that runs against whatever its current agenda is a conspiracy, right? Like Wuhan lab leak. Oh, conspiracy. Just because some conspiracy theorists said, oh, this might be a thing, therefore it's a conspiracy. It's not a valid hypothesis until Jon Stewart comes out and says that it is. Okay, then. Took him 2 years, but A socialist intellectual should refuse to wear the cloaks of virtue, erudition, and detachment. She should be prepared to enter the field of class struggle on the side of workers and the exploited. Conservative and progressive PMC elites and the institutions they control are actively hostile to worker power and socialism as such. Therefore, solidarity and organization are more critical than ever to long-term political struggle. Affect-driven protests, raucous crowds, and violent rioting may provide the political openings for social change, but political transformation at the scale we need demands discipline of the kind the academic left is used to condemning. While a mixed economy may be the short-term reality that we dare hope for, let's strengthen the hand of the socialist aspects of that hybrid system. while the PMC promotes the hoarding of capital and virtue, we must detach ourselves from its crypto-puritanical regulation of human appetites and human relations. We must be heretics. We should blaspheme. The PMC elite has refused to name the economic system that has ruined our planet, undermined our trust in public institutions, destroyed public health, diminished our childhoods, and litigated our pleasures. Neither evil nor virtuous, the PMC is a secular and material antagonist. In calling out capitalism as the enemy of the people, we must also name our enemy's most assiduous courtier and sycophant, the professional managerial class. All aboard the PMC class. Let's meaning the class that is ongoing and that you can take on demand at theoryunderground.com. Not all aboard the PMC. Of course, I do like Elton's proposal in the third lecture sessions when he said really the idea of a more a more equal society would be more people in the PMC, not fewer. I would almost agree, because automating the most undignified kinds of labor, the most backbreaking and life-shortening and mind-numbing forms of labor, is obviously the number one goal and the absolute breaking point or line in the sand that we should all be organizing around. But also, and this is a sort of expansion on what Elton was saying, we haven't read the book by David Graeber on bullshit jobs in this class, even though it is in the recommended readings. It is one of the most important pieces of this whole puzzle, and it will be gotten to in future lectures, in future courses. But for now, I just want to say that the PMC is not always very productive. It's not always this site of skill monopolization and training. It's also a place where people have a lot of bullshit jobs. Even when you're fulfilling like a basically important function for the reproduction of a society, the point is that might be bullshit in the sense that insofar as it's privatized, in the way that it's privatized, it's actually bullshit. But then there's also just straight up bullshit jobs. And so not all PMC jobs are bullshit. Some are extremely important. Some will never be automated away. In fact, if we count nursing as a PMC job, which is a complicated issue that Barbara Ehrenreich tries to get into in the first PMC essay, she comes out on this position of like, it's kind of like one of the blurry borders of the PMC into the working class. That's one of those ones that could ostensibly be automated away, but who wants that? Right? You want human contact if you're in the hospital bed, right? You want that. And the thing is to fill the ranks of the important PMC positions with more people, because they shouldn't be so overregulated and artificially competitive. They are artificially competitive today because of those regulations trying to inflate the value of these jobs, because they are for profit and because our entire system currently relies on this division of labor. A radical transformation and reconfiguration of the existing division of labor is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle that tends to be left out. So, with all of that said, I'm going to close this thing out by making a new advertisement for exegetical readings with me in the morning. What I have been doing up until now is playing this.
Welcome. What you saw here was a bunch of clips of excerpts from a couple of reading sessions that were done as a part of the essential.
But what I want to do is instead do a new one where I just say something. So, what's up, everybody? I just want to make a quick little advertisement for something that I do some mornings, most weeks, and that is Essential Texts with Dave in the morning, where I do exegetical readings of essential texts. So check it out. I'm going to actually take you for a quick little look over here on the website. Bear with me. Let's go to theoryunderground.com/support. And I'm going to show you how you can be invited to the exegetical readings that are occurring in the mornings. So basically, the folks who are in the chat with me right now, because I'm just finishing up with an exegetical reading, as well as the people who will be with me in the future, or the people who get access to the special playlist of all of the exegetical readings for all of the courses within a given year, what they do is they go down here on the support page store, and there's a couple ways of going about it. Like, look, I have philosophical guidance sessions, one-on-one Zoom calls with Dave. You can also buy the courses, buy my book. But exegetical readings of essential texts with Dave is currently marked down to $250, and it gives you a year of access. But also, you get access on a monthly basis if you sign up to be a patron right here for $50 a month, or if you sign up to pay for 1/10 of the annual costs of Theory Underground's means of production. Okay, right now 1/10 of the cost is $401.28. We have so far had 2 people purchase 1/10 of the operating costs, though of course they purchased the 1/10 of the operating costs before the app was added, which has doubled the yearly cost. People who participate in that also get access to a once-a-year stream, or it's a private stream, where Anne and I go over the accounting so that you can see the taxes, the books, understand where the money goes, how that works. So if you want to be if you want to be in that very special little club, then this is what you would want to sign up for. And then you will get access to the exegetical readings, which means that you'll get random invites from me at random times of the day, and then also sometimes scheduled ahead of times where I say, hey, this excerpt or this essential chapter for this, for this course that's ongoing right now, well, you're invited. And then you'll be able to hop in the Zoom call and hear me read it and talk about it. And afterwards, after it stops recording, we usually have a really good conversation that spans all kinds of things. But at the most simple level, just become a $50 patron right here. And honestly, this one means a lot to me. Other ones are meant to address, say, the cost of the website, the costs of the app, etc. But this one, the $50 patron one, that one's to me directly. That one is a way of actually freeing up some of my time and energy, of showing me how much this stuff means to you. I received a comment just a couple days ago from somebody who messaged me directly and said, I just wanted you to know, Dave, Theory Underground content is the best stuff on YouTube, in my opinion. And, it's not the first time I've heard that. Everything I do is so that you'll, so the right people will say that is the case to them, right? People whose hearts and minds are invested in understanding so that we can hopefully affect positive change that breaks us out of the habitual patterns and entrenched ideological circles or self-defeating cycles that we've been in for the last 70 years. People who are willing to roll up their sleeves and actually do this for the next few years. Well, I hope that those kinds of people find such value in this content. And so when I do hear that from somebody, it makes me feel like I'm not wasting my time. Of course, I would do it for my own sake, but it is really good to hear that someone else agrees with that. But if that's true, if you really believe that, if this really means so much to you, then you should try to find a way to make $50 a month that extra that you could direct towards me, because I have a material reality. My hands that you see me waving at the camera right now, if you have eyes on screen, these are flesh and bone. I am not a digital thing. I do not exist on the internet only. I have to eat. I have to pay rent. And this last several years of giving it all away for free has been totally self-defeating and not worth it at all. I mean, there's a definite rewarding sense to it all, but the constantly having to move and deal with housing crises because I was trying to cut corners on housing costs, living in Mexico to try to cut on housing costs, it's not a long-term solution. It's not going to work when I have children, because I do want to have a life, I do want to have children, and I don't want to stop doing theory just because of that. I want to be a parent and a theorist. I want to be not the main breadwinner, but I want to carry my part of the load in the relationship, right? And so I can't do that. I can't bring the last 12 years of effort that I've put into theory, including $60,000 of debt at the community college and then state university that I went to, if I am giving it all away for free online. And so that really does suck. I really do wish that I could. And we try to make stuff accessible as possible, but also I want to have a real life. I want to be able to have my head a little bit more above water, because I've been choking here for the last decade. And when I get a $50 per month patron sign up, it really does mean the world. And so if you actually believe that this is some of the most important stuff on the internet, or if you get more value from this than you do anything else on the internet, then I'm like everyone else who puts stuff up on the internet, meaning that I have material necessities that have to be addressed. And, you know, I have my elbow sore right now still from when I was working at Amazon. My elbow right now hurts because of my job at Amazon. I had to work at Amazon because I could not figure out exactly how to monetize stuff in a way that I felt was fair and that I felt would motivate me to keep doing the things that I know I need to be doing, that I feel called to be doing. And Theory Underground is basically what came out of working at Amazon, kind of rethinking, okay, what is my approach here? And that's why I changed things from Theory Plebe to Theory Underground, and am re-releasing things in the ways that I've been re-releasing things. But I only have so much time and energy. Exhaustion is a bitch. Just last week I fainted. My lips turned purple. My eyes rolled up in the back of my head, and I fell over against the wall. And Anne had to see it firsthand. And she knows, as I do, that probably the biggest contributing factor to my exhaustion has been the fact that I put every ounce of my being into this project. And so if you can give a little bit back, for real, it would mean the world. And with that, I'm going to close out by playing a testimony from our homie Bert. Bert Vanderkar is someone I met at Boise, Idaho, when I brought Michael Downs to do a lecture on Baudrillard and consumerism. And basically, he saw the poster, he saw it online, he came to the event, he got to know me, he started getting involved with discussion groups, and now, even when he's not involved in things, he still makes the payment because he said that it's the number one way of keeping alive this thing that has changed his life so significantly. So, to get access to these exegetical readings on the private side live, be like Bert. Here we go.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that poster. Baudrillard in Boise, fucking Idaho? Are you kidding me? It was virtually an answer to an unspoken prayer, you know. It really was. And I just couldn't believe that somebody was interested in the things that I was interested in, that I had been interested in for years and had kind of given up on in futility. I'd labored in solitude for so long. I had no one to talk to about it, no one to bounce ideas off of. It just vastly accelerated my ability, I don't get too philosophical, to interrogate to inquire and to see connections between things.
And so the theory underground that Dave is developing in this mission is trying to reach an audience of people who aren't just doing philosophy in a university setting. Why is there an advantage to doing philosophy outside of an academic setting?
Well, the neat thing is that you can really drill down. You know, when you're in school, you have to do 50 things, and you do them all partially. And it's like you're digging a well, and you're digging very shallow wells. When you can drill down deep and take your time and really get into something, especially with a company of fellows, that you get into the slipstream of a great philosopher, and you just have to take the deep dive. But initially, a lot of these philosophers, they're speaking to a tradition, they're trying to resolve specific problems, and they just assume you know what those are, that you've had their life experience. So the first time you read them, you're just trying to get the lay of the land, and you may well have some insights. You may wrongly associate certain things you know with what they're saying, but then you'll maybe look at a secondary text, and now, since you have something to bring to the table, all the lights start going off. And then when you read the philosopher the second time, you can read them more knowledgeably, and so you're looking for things, you're better able to follow along, you're not left behind so much. The third reading, though, and these are for profound books. I mean, you don't have to read everything like this, but for a profound text, the third reading is where you've learned enough that you relate it to everything else you know, that you begin to see the connectedness between what this philosopher is doing and the implicit, unstated situation that they were speaking to initially. You know something about that, and you see the connection between that and all sorts of other things, and you connect it to your life and the way you live and move through the world and the way you see things and interact with people, and you are not just absorbing, you're creating, you're a co-creator. When it's all said and done, you just have to put it into your own words. And there's a danger of reductionism there, but when you put it into your own words and you're bringing all these different strands together, it's really phenomenal. And that's what the third reading does.
So, a few years ago, Dave, running the 3 Click channel, had a Patreon going and
Right.
discontinued accepting money from people. But since then, you have continued to make a donation monthly. And
Right.
It's obviously very meaningful to Dave, meaningful to me as well, being Dave's partner.
Right.
And so, why do you do that? Essentially.
Well, Dave brings people together. Whatever Dave is doing is valuable, and my life was completely changed, and I'm grateful. I can't afford to give Dave $50 a month, but I do because it brings me joy. Every time I get my Social Security, the first thing I do is send $50 to Dave, and my heart sings. And it's a sense of gratitude. I don't feel obligated to do it. I want to do it. And I want to do whatever I can to help Dave do for other people what he did for me. And I want that to continue. And it's truly, I take great joy in it. It's the best $50 I spend a month. It really is. If you can plant a seed where a handful of people meet each other and they can all have the experience that we've had face to face with each other, that would be awesome.
Okay, now I'm coming through on the stream. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just intervened. Thanks, Sid Nanda. I did not have eyes on chat. And y'all didn't miss anything, okay? It's just a little bit of time in silence, I suppose. Time with your own self. Time to listen to your own thoughts. Boomering out over here. Anyway, okay. Thank God for Anne. So, anyway, all I was trying to show you all is that there's some cool shit coming up. Angela Nagel versus the New Priesthood, a new theory of populism and PMC via anti-clerisy. So, I mean, that's a confounded way of putting it. I don't know. I just tried to get all the words that were relevant into the title. Instead of being clickbaity, I was just trying to get all of the important words in there. But Angela Nagel is very important, and I sort of make a defense of her in this video. And then the fourth lectures, left versus right. Left versus post-left perspectives, Nagel and Liu, PMC course with Dave and Elton. So the Nagel one will be tomorrow night. The fourth lectures with Elton, that'll be on Wednesday night at 6:30 Mountain Time, which is what, 8:30 Eastern Time. And any of these, to get it in your own time zone, just go to the wall. Just go look at it for yourself, and you'll be able to see it. And then I'm very excited to announce Unveiling What is Sex by Alenka Zupancic with Cadell Last of Philosophy Portal. That's coming up on Friday at 10 a.m. That'll be a morning stream, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which would be what? Noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. For Cadell Last in Central European Time, I think that's going to be 5 p.m. for him. And basically, he and I are going to be announcing a new course that is launching at Theory Underground. It's a very special section that is preparation for his ICRE course that he will be teaching that launches on July 15th. And I'm very excited because it's going to give me a better basis in the psychoanalytic theory literature of our times, because she is one of the most cutting-edge continental and psychoanalytic thinkers in the world today, a fellow traveler of Slavoj Žižek, one of the few who is in what is called the Slovenian Circle. And so, cool stuff. That's all this week. What I was saying when I was muted is that I am bouncing back better every day. Last night was the first full night of sleep that I've gotten in the last week and a half since I fainted, and yeah, I'm starting to feel genuinely rested, which is a big time relief, to say the least. Okay, there would be no Mark Fisher without Nick Land. What is that a reference to, Sid Nanda? I don't remember. Was it the left versus post-left thing? Because, yeah, the idea of exiting does definitely come from him somewhat, but I think it's also a big deal. I mean, it's largely also Fisher, right? Because they both talk about it. Though they both, tried to reinvent the wheel and arguably did less good of a job than they would have done if they had read the works that are in this playlist. Because when they're talking about the Cathedral or the Vampire Castle or any of these other things, these are not the best. These are not the best ways of conceiving the situation. There are definitely better ones that you get through this course. Burnham. Yes. Well, it's just, and I saw the conversation going on in the chat. It's just not right that people try to downplay, disregard, or write off PMC theory on the basis of it having some influence from Burnham, as though it's his fucking idea, in some idealist sense, he just invented it or some bullshit. That's not true. It's utterly absurd. So when someone like President Sunday, who's like a miniature Vosh streamer debate bro, goes and says some shit like, oh, that person's referencing the PMC, then that person must be a Burnhamite. Okay, dude, yeah. Okay, so you want to call Catherine Liu a Burnhamite? So you want to call Barbara Ehrenreich a Burnhamite? How about fucking Mao? You want to call him a Burnhamite? He didn't call it the PMC, but he definitely respected this distinction between intellectual and physical forms of labor, between blue and white collar, etc. So yeah, people do reject it because of Burnham, but they're just looking for a cheap way to get out of having to think, which is most of what influencership is today. So, what are we going to do? What can we do? It's just the way it is, I suppose. But anyway, all right, I'm about to close this thing out. I just wanted to make a plug for those upcoming streams that are this week. I'm so excited. And now I'm going to go rest up. Take care, everybody. Peace.